I'm going to talk primarily about Division One because I think the issues of unionization and reform primarily apply to Division One. In spite of the fact that so many aspects of college sports are deeply commercial, there are some fundamental differences between the way an athletic department in Division One operates and the way a typical business operates. In college athletic departments, there are no stockholders. Stockholders in a typical corporation want to see profits so they can get dividends and capital gains. But there are no stockholders. There are no owners as such. Instead, there are stakeholders. And what stakeholders want to see is victories. That puts a very different kind of pressure and creates a different dynamic in college sports than in the rest of the U.S. economy. Another characteristic, obviously, is that player compensation has been suppressed forever and ever, although, as Jama points out, is being somewhat relaxed due to a number of factors in the last 10 or 15 years. Because player salaries are suppressed, college athletic departments seek to recruit athletes, induce them to come to their school. They can't use money to do that directly. They can't offer higher salaries. So instead, they try to hire well-known, fancy coaches to appeal to the high school athletes they're trying to recruit or the transfers they're trying to recruit. They also invest a lot of money in fancy facilities. And as Jama alluded to more recently, there are a variety of different perks that they can offer that would attract athletes. And finally, schools are now very deeply engaged in offering support for NILs for athletes to be able to earn additional income. All of this is furthered by a strange system of transfers that exists. Transfers go from the athletes who produce the revenue to coaches, athletic directors, and conference commissioners. In fact, the coaches basically get paid for the market value of the athletes that whom they recruit. There's also a transfer from football programs in Division One and men's basketball programs to non-revenue sports. And finally, there's there's a transfer system that operates from students of color to white students. As a result of the fundamental characteristic that the athletic departments have no stockholders, what happens is that whenever a new pile of money comes to an athletic director, and we all know that new piles of money have been falling on athletic directors for many, many years, they deploy that money to improve the performance of their top teams, mostly men's basketball and football, but some other sports as well. So any new money coming into the department is used to attract new athletes through higher coaches' salaries, through better facilities, and so on and so forth. And as a result of that, the bottom line is red at virtually all the Division One programs. In any given year, you might find 20 to 25 who report a surplus, but that surplus is often reported because they're not counting all capital expenditures and all indirect expenditures. In 2019, the fiscal year 2019, which was the last year before the pandemic, and hence the last year where we can think that is at all representative of what the fundamental issues are, there was a median deficit in athletic departments in Division One, in FBS, a median deficit in FBS of $18.8 million. One department had a deficit as large as $65.3 million. FCS and Division One without football each had median deficits over $14 million. Within FBS, there's a clear distinction between the Group of Five and the Power Five conferences. The Group of Five had a median deficit of $23 million, and the Power Five had a median deficit of $6.97 million. And if you divide FBS into quartiles, you see that the second, third, and fourth quartiles had deficits of 11, 25, and $21 million. And only the top quartile had a deficit that was a surplus, is $2.1 million. What do these deficits mean? Fundamentally, they mean that universities have to charge higher athletic fees. They mean that universities have to charge higher tuition. These higher tuition numbers in turn support the growth of student debt. Student debt hit a record of $1.6 trillion last year. They also lead to increasing pressures to cut funding for women's sports and for Olympic sports. So any notion of changing the system or introducing pay for play or other measures to compensate athletes have to take these factors into account. Now, it's true that if you do start paying athletes directly, that what's likely to happen is that the system will adjust. The coaches, for instance, instead of being paid the value of the athletes they recruit, will have lower salaries. But for coaches to get lower salaries, it means that their existing long-term contracts first have to expire, and then the culture in the marketplace has to change. That could take 5, 10, or 15 years, depending on the school. And long-term expenditures on facilities are not going to change as rapidly. So any change that happens in the underlying institutions is going to have some very important effects on the deficits and the overall financing of higher education.